This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Ethiopian forces are surrounding Tigray region's capital as the government's 72-hour surrender deadline approaches. Save the Children ranks the Democratic Republic of Congo among the worst places for children to live. We tell you why. And China is preparing to launch an unmanned spacecraft to the moon. Hello and welcome. You're watching Africa Live. We're coming to you live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Viviers, and here with the latest in business is Rama.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Here's what's coming up in the course of the hour. A contraction in economic output is pushing Nigeria yet again into a recession. We'll have the latest numbers. And passenger car sales in Egypt have gone up by 24% despite the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. We'll explore why in the course of the hour. For now, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Hannah.
Thanks, Rama. We'll see you in a bit. Let's begin with the situation in Ethiopia. The government says its troops have begun encircling the Tigrayan regional capital of Mekelle. The announcement comes a day after Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed issued a 72-hour ultimatum for the Tigray People's Liberation Front to surrender. The TPFL is the ruling party in the region. The military launched an offensive earlier this month after escalating tensions with the TPLF. Government spokesperson Redwan Hussein has termed the latest move as the beginning of the end of the operation. TPLF leaders have vowed to resist the government. Meanwhile, the UN has called for the protection of civilians, aid workers, and key infrastructure. Meanwhile, thousands of people continue fleeing on a daily basis from Tigray into neighboring Sudan. The latest UN Refugee Agency figures indicate that more than 33,000 Ethiopian refugees are now in Sudan. Sunday saw new arrivals, some on foot, while others arrived in boats. Many say they had lost contact with their relatives.
I took my 5 children and ran, but I don't know where one of my children is. I don't know where she went. I don't have a picture. I have nothing. She has her daughter with her as well. So my daughter and her daughter too.
My whole home, furniture, my pharmacies are tooled by the gangs and some mobs of coming from far region. The Abiy Ahmed military forces are shooting at us. There are a lot of wounded people. There are a lot of people here suffering from malaria, which cannot be, they cannot afford any medication. So the world must expose and must understand our problem.
CGTN's Guram Chala is standing by for us in Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa, with the latest. Guram, this is such an important story on the continent right now. Thank you for bringing us these latest updates. Tell us more about the military's bids to take over Mekelle.
Well, Hannah, the war in the north is still continuing in different parts, but the National Defense Force have been reporting gains made in different strategic military locations and the capture of important cities like Adwa, Aksum, and Adigrat as well. And they are saying, as you've said, that they have encircled the most important strategic location of the TPLF, which is the capital city of the regional state as well, the Mekelle city itself. And they are saying that according to the ultimatum given by the Prime Minister himself for 72 hours to surrender, for the leadership there and the special force and the militia at the same time, they are waiting for the response to come out so that they can start their attack or at least finish the job with minimum casualties. So the tension in the north is in this kind of situation at the moment. On the other hand, we have heard that the TPLF itself is reporting several victories that they say they have claimed that they have gained against the Ethiopian National Defense Force. But so many people are saying that this war could go out of control in Mekelle and could damage lots of lives and properties at the same time. So we have to wait and see in the next few hours which is going to be the reality, whether the 72 hours will be respected or the war will continue in few hours.
Guram, definitely something people do not want to see, but the UN has called for the protection of civilians in the conflict. You spoke to us earlier on in the day about this. What more can you tell us about how the two sides are responding to this?
The humanitarian situation, Hana, has been dire for the past 3 weeks. People have been evicted and their lives have been disrupted because of the ongoing conflict in the Tigray regional state. As you've said, so many people have been crossing borders looking for shelter and security and are now in Sudan. And still, thousands are crossing for the quest of peace and security, and also to look for a better place for their children at the same time. In the next few days, so many people are also expected to fall in this kind of dire situation, unfortunately. But the government is saying that it is now working with the UNHCR and other aid organizations to try and open a humanitarian corridor so that those people who have been affected can be supported. Ethiopia's State Minister of Foreign Affairs, who is also the spokesperson of the ongoing state of emergency, Redwan Hussein, has been talking about this important issue of opening humanitarian corridor earlier today. Let's take a listen.
We are planning to have two routes. One, in areas which are actually now unfettered, which are free, those areas could be handled by the government, basically. And then with the support of other partners. In areas which are not free yet or going to be free, then there has to be a safer corridor whereby UN agencies and other partners could supply humanitarian items like food and drugs.
Well, that was Redwan Hussein, the State Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Ethiopian Minister of Foreign Affairs, and also spokesperson of the state of emergency in the Tigray regional state. He was talking about the importance of handling the situation, the humanitarian crisis at the moment in the northern part of the country, and the importance of opening humanitarian corridor as per the request by the international humanitarian organizations there, Hana.
Thank you for that, Gurum. We're definitely going to be hearing more from you on that ongoing story. Gurum Chala speaking to us live from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Well, over to Uganda now, where police have said the death toll from last week's violent protests over the arrest of opposition presidential candidate Bobby Wine has risen to 45. Police spokesperson Fred Enanga said 17 people had died over the weekend due to injuries sustained in the Wednesday and Thursday protests. He said joint security teams had been hunting for ringleaders who coordinated protests in various parts of the East African country. Uganda's Electoral Commission early this month cleared 11 presidential candidates, including incumbent President Yoweri Museveni, to the contest in the 2021 general elections. The vote counting is underway in Burkina Faso following Sunday's presidential and parliamentary elections. President Roch Kabore is battling 13 other candidates as he seeks a second term in office. Here's more on that story.
As citizens of Burkina Faso await the outcome of the Sunday exercise, there is a section of voters who never cast their ballots. Threats of violence posed by jihadist elements made many locals in the north and eastern regions stay away from polling stations.
A number of major challenges were noted. However, there were polling stations that could not be opened in certain localities. The reasons are essentially security and the impossibility of finding someone to run a polling station.
Opposition leader Zephyrin Jabre cast doubts on the election outcome after alleging vote rigging.
We noted a problem with electoral mapping. The political dialogue decided that only the Constitutional Council can decide where one does not vote. For the past 48 hours, the Ministry of Defense, together with the National Independent Electoral Commission, have been in the process of modifying the places where people should and should not vote. This raises the issue of voter equity in relation to access to elections, and we want clear explanations as to why polling stations have closed at the last minute.
However, incumbent President Roch Kabore called for calm and appealed to the population to vote.
I call on all Burkinabe, whatever their political camp, not to be lazy, because this is about democracy, development and peace in Burkina Faso. It is important that every Burkinabe goes to the polls to choose his candidate. As I said recently, Politics are over. We held campaigns. Everyone spoke. It's over. Today we are voting.
There were over 21,000 polling stations. 68 were outside the country at embassies and consulates.
As a good citizen, I came to vote because I have to choose who should govern our country. If the outgoing president or someone else is elected, what we expect of him is to focus on the issue of security and health.
Burkina Faso's Electoral Commission is expected to announce provisional results within the next 7 days. Mohamed Abubakar, CGTN.
Let's head to Liberia, where the Electoral Commission has confirmed that a referendum will take place next month. Voters will decide and propose changes to the country's constitution. Changes include reducing the length of presidential terms and allowing for dual citizenship. The Commission said procedural issues that risk derailing the exercise have been resolved. Liberia's Supreme Court had previously threatened to cancel the referendum after discovering ballots violated the law. The ballots presented multiple referendum questions on the same sheet of paper. In response, the Election Commission said that questions could be printed on separate sheets of paper. A new report by Save the Children International has ranked the Democratic Republic of Congo among the 12 most dangerous countries for children to live in. The report says more than 3 million children are living in conflict areas where militia groups have been killing civilians for more than 2 decades. Chris Ochamringa reports.
The report, titled Stop the War on Children, says more than 3,000 children in the DRC were recruited by armed groups between 2018 and 2019. Many of them were killed in airstrikes, landmines, and other explosive weapons. Other countries named include Syria, Afghanistan, Yemen, Mali, Somalia, and South Sudan. Somalia and the DRC were ranked as the most dangerous for girls due to the high number of cases of sexual violence. The researchers recorded 20,000 cases of sexual violence between 2005 and 2018. The east of the DRC has been racked by violence for over 2 decades. The UN estimates there are more than 100 armed groups fighting over land, political power, and the control of minerals. Chris Ochamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
Let's now head to China, where the country is preparing to launch an unmanned spacecraft from the Wenchang Space Center in Hainan province. A Long March 5 rocket will carry the Chang'e 5 probe to collect and bring back lunar rocks. It's the first such mission in more than 4 decades. Li Jianhua has more.
This is the final preparations for the launch, and now behind me I think you can see the white smoke around the launch pad, and the rocket so far has been enclosed for the past week, and we arrived a week ago when the rocket was moved onto the launch pad, and now we have entered into the final phase of this upcoming launch. And of course we have been staying here for the whole afternoon, and now it's getting dark, and when it comes to the weather, and we say that the weather conditions would make or break the rocket's launch. And now today is a little bit cloudy, and just now it was drizzling and it's windy. But according to the meteorological station here at the launch site, it is unlikely to affect the upcoming launch. It is actually quite important when it comes to China's space exploration, especially in the area of lunar exploration. We know that that will be the first lunar sample return mission for China. And if we look at the process, the lunar probe is comprised of 4 parts: an orbiter, and a sender, a lander, and a returner. So on the surface moon, when the whole lunar probe lands on the moon's surface, the lander will get some samples and put them in the vessels attached to the ascender. So that will be totally automated the first time for China. And the ascender will take off from the moon's surface automatically also the first time. And we will have a rendezvous with the orbiter and the returner, and they will as a whole come back to the Earth at one point before entering the Earth. They will separate, and the returner will landing somewhere in North China's Inner Mongolia in about 20 days time. We know that over the past 70 years, actually starting the 1950s, over 50 lunar probes have been sent to space, and China now, if successful this time, it will make the country the 3rd in the world to complete this task of extracting some material from the moon's surface after the United States and the former Soviet Union. So we can see that it is quite important for China now.
One major objective of space exploration is the search for alternative energy sources. After decades of exploring, researchers have found such a source right on our doorstep. As the Chang'e 5 lunar mission nears, CGTN's Wu Lei takes a look at this new potential resource.
As Earth's supply of coal and oil runs low, humans are now looking to the moon for alternative energy sources. Scientists have found huge amounts of untapped energy in the presence of chemical elements on the moon. The most important of these elements is helium-3, a colorless, odorless, and stable isotope of helium. Scientists say using helium-3 is safer and cleaner, and it's non-radioactive. It's estimated that 100 tons of helium-3 would be equivalent to a year's worth of energy consumption on Earth. But the total reserves of helium-3 on Earth only amount to about 500 kilograms. Top Chinese scientist Ouyang Ziyuan has estimated over 1 million tons of helium-3 are embedded in the surface of the moon, which could solve humans' energy demand for roughly 10,000 years. But how can this and the study of the moon's soil be explored further? And how does it tie in with China's upcoming lunar exploration mission? Find out more on our next episode.
Engineers involved in the mission must face enormous work pressure as well as solitude. One of them told us how he overcomes the difficulties to stay focused on his job.
我们这个测控点有一个非常好听的名字，我们这里叫做万里海天第一棒。如果把整个火箭发射过程比喻成一场马拉松的话，火箭起飞初始段的测量就是我们这个测控点来负责的，相当于我们接过了火箭的第一棒。3117跟踪正常，通过电遥测信号正常。我叫刘选志，95年出生，今年25岁。我现在的岗位是文昌指挥控制中心配电分系统指挥员。 就是保证好在任务过程中不会断电。通古岭上面在位的人是26个，年轻人挺多的，最小的01年的。我们靠近海边，虽然说风景很美，但是同样带来的也是高盐雾和高湿度的天气。就是我们平时做设备的防腐、除锈会比其他地方做的更多，而且工作量也会比其他地方大。还有一个，我们这边台风就比较多了。最近常说的一句话，到了年底，台风也来冲业绩。 吉他是大学的时候学的，对于我们来说，平时的生活还是比较枯燥的。只有在你的身心得到了放松，或者是你从另外一个角度去感受到了生活的魅力，那你肯定对你的工作是有促进作用的。T0及理论弹道检查正常。作为岗位人员来说，看一次火箭发射是很难的，我们要实时监测火箭的数据，然后上传给中心。总会有机会看的，反正都是做贡献，只是 早看和晚看的问题。
More news after the break. Here's what's coming up. Yet another breakthrough. British drug maker AstraZeneca and the University of Oxford say their COVID-19 vaccine has an efficacy rate of up to 90%.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Athens, Tunis, Cairo, Juba, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. You're watching Africa Live. Marking yet another breakthrough in the fight against COVID-19, a vaccine being developed by British drug maker AstraZeneca and the University of Oxford is reported to have an efficacy rate of up to 90%. The interim analysis was based on 131 infections among participants who received the vaccine. AstraZeneca also reported that no serious side effects had shown up. The results come after U.S. rivals published interim data showing efficacy of more than 90%. While the efficacy reading from AstraZeneca's vaccine is lower than its U.S. rivals, the data will boost confidence about the chances of successfully developing a variety of vaccines using different approaches. UK officials hailed the announcement, calling it exciting news. Well, Turkey widened a phase 3 trial for a China-manufactured COVID-19 vaccine on Monday and began injecting non-medical volunteers. 3 non-meds were the first to take the first dose of Sinovac Biotech's experimental vaccine at Turkish capital of Ankara City Hospital. Preliminary trial results showed last week that the vaccine triggered a quick immune response, but the level of antibodies produced was lower than in people who had recovered from the disease. While the early to mid-stage trials were not designed to assess the efficacy of Coronavac, researchers say that it could provide sufficient protection based on their experience with other vaccines and data from preclinical studies with macaque monkeys. The study comes hot on the heels of upbeat news this month from U.S. drug makers Pfizer and Moderna, as well as from Russia and the UK, which showed their experimental vaccines had encouraging results. Well, as cases continue to rise across Europe, more than 160 schools in Germany have closed due to the pandemic. In the latest attempt to keep schools open, the German government has imposed a simple yet effective method to battle the virus. Evangela Sipsas has the details.
A national obsession has become a custom now. At this Berlin middle school, opening windows before and during class, whatever the weather, is a method to ward off coronavirus. Before every class begins, teachers encourage the students to keep their coats on while opening the windows for about 30 minutes. Airing classrooms has become mandatory at every school across the country. Ventilating rooms has been added to the German government's formula for tackling coronavirus as one of the cheapest and effective ways of containing the disease. Its goal to prevent the concentration of aerosols that transmit diseases. Although other measures are obligatory too, airing classes is proving successful.
Opening the windows is much more effective than being in such a tight space with so many pupils. So we feel a lot more safe during these measures with opening the windows and teaching while we know there is fresh air coming in. And I'm sure the pupils also feel so much more secure.
Schools nationwide are better equipped than last spring. The measures in place are set in a way that students from different classes don't cross paths in the hallway, and only one person is allowed for a bathroom break at a time. In Berlin, the safety protocol changes depending on the number of infections in the school's neighborhood following a traffic light system. When 35 or more are infected per 100,000 within 7 days, the light switches to amber. If the number of infected people rises to 50, then it switches to red, a danger zone. After the first lockdown, this school is now in the orange zone, but its principal is prepared to go red and to work in half groups if necessary.
We are currently at the orange level. This means we have to walk around the classroom and throughout the school grounds and school buildings wearing a mask. If we get to the red level, we'll have to adapt the so-called hybrid learning, where one part of the class is taught at home via video conferencing and the other group is here in the classroom.
Since it has become known that 90% of COVID-19 patients contract the virus indoors, German authorities have long stressed that airing out classrooms is the only way to keep schools open. They are even buying a large number of air purifiers. But that still doesn't convince teachers that it is indeed safe, and we've seen more than 160 schools close because of COVID-19. Evangelo Sipsas for CGTN, Berlin.
Well, heading back to Africa, Nigeria has showcased its first prototype COVID-19 disinfection chamber. This as the second wave of the pandemic begins across the globe, calling for the need to intensify safety measures. As CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam reports, the machine has features that deny access to individuals who do not observe safety rules.
No face mask detected. Please put on your face mask.
The very first indigenous automated decontamination chamber made in the north-central state of Plateau. Worried about the rapid spread of COVID-19, 3 inventors, Williams, Gio Quens and Adibola, created the device. It's enabled with temperature sensors, cameras, hand sanitizer dispensers, among other features. The interactive disinfectant chamber forces people to obey safety guidelines like wearing face masks and using hand sanitizers.
This one is all in one, like this particular model, because we make it in such a way that it has a mode that we can activate it in such a way that it will operate without the slider automatic, yes, without the face mask, because the software analyze if you are having a face mask before the door will open.
Despite the economic hardship, the trio was not deterred. They personally sponsored the project, which cost about $2,700. Made with 100% locally sourced materials, the project took about 4 months to complete. Now the inventors are hoping to mass produce the prototype, but factors like funding are setting them back.
I would say we can actually produce 10 of these in less than 2 weeks with the current number of teams. Like I said, everything is locally sourced here. So when it comes to the place of troubleshooting and warranty, you know the company, everything is here in Nigeria. So it can easily be troubleshoot and also easily be, you can easily replace any of the damaged components.
What we actually expect the government to do for us is provide an enabling environment for us. For instance, like you need NEPA, you need light, you need power. Power should be there. In fact, we're actually working in this facility because there's light. We've been running on Gen for quite a long time.
Nigeria's technological sector has remained underdeveloped and underfunded. With the second wave of the coronavirus pandemic sweeping across the globe, inventions like this would require the much-needed support to stem the tide. For Williams, Geoquens and Sunday, they hope to train more youths in the nearest future to help birth technological solutions such as this. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Play 2, Nigeria.
In Senegal, the groundnut selling season is set to begin at the end of this month. In the heart of the groundnut basin, farmers are already at work awaiting the arrival of the first buyers. Asatal has more.
Taibanessen is about 240 kilometers south of Dakar. In this region, a local organization which brings together 2,000 farmers is processing groundnuts coming from the fields. On this site, there are 30 semi-industrial units operating at full capacity for the complete processing of the product.
I have grown 3 varieties of groundnuts this year on an area of 20 hectares. I had a good yield because I could harvest 180 tons of groundnuts. We are taking out the seeds step by step.
Before, all the work was done by hand. It was very hard for us. Now, with the help of machines, we do the shelling, sorting and bagging more efficiently. There are 40 people working in each unit. Every day they earn between $10 and $14 US.
According to the Ministry of Agriculture, the harvest is abundant thanks to good rainfall and better preparation than in previous years. A record production of 1,800,000 tons of groundnuts is expected, compared with 1,400,000 tons last year. The government has also decided to set the minimum producer price at around $5 per kilo. Habib Cham is the president of the Groundnut Producers and Exporters Collective. In his opinion, it is important to help farmers to organize better.
We assist them. We provide them with good quality seeds and also good fertilizers. We also offer them differential price. They first only give us back what they have invested. For example, if we give around $10 US per produce, they then will reimburse us without interest. It will encourage them to sell us part of their production. And we also organize them to keep a part of their seed to increase the cultivated areas year after year.
At the collection point, Habib Cham manages to gather around 600 tons of groundnuts each day. This allows him to have a considerable stock. Thanks to the signing of an agreement between China and Senegal, most of his groundnuts will be exported to the Chinese market.
We have the chance to access the Chinese market since 2014. I think the producers never had any problems since then, because the Chinese market offers us prices that are attractive compared to the local market.
According to Habib, this has allowed Senegalese producers to improve their standards of living. Astatal, CGTN.
World Fisheries Day has been celebrated throughout the world. The day looks to promote the protection of nature and the rights of fishing communities. In South Africa, the country's Department of Environmental Affairs is commemorating the day by launching its National Action Plan for the Conservation of Sharks. CGTN's Travis Andrews has the report.
They're an apex predator of the sea that help maintain a healthy ocean, but sharks are in serious decline, which could come at a cost to the lives they sustain both in and out of the water. Through the government's National Action Plan for the Conservation and Management of Sharks, though, they hope to boost more informed decisions that will be taken on consumptive and non-consumptive species of sharks. A top ministerial team of shark experts drew up a list of 62 recommendations that will be taken forward by the department to better manage the living natural resource.
There is a gap when it comes to the relationship between scientific evidence that we have and policy decisions and management action. So it's important that we close that gap. It's important that we develop concrete, measurable indicators for the implementation of aspects of the current plan and also clear timeframes.
Of the 188 species of sharks, rays and chimeras, around 33% are endemic to South African waters, and some even enjoy protection, such as the great white shark. The species has been a key drawcard in the ecotourism industry until recently, when its numbers dwindled in the Western Cape. Now key decisions need to be taken on other species as well that will yield the greatest benefit to the country.
What we're looking at is removing species that are of tourism potential from harvest and trying to develop, like the white shark cage diving industry, ecotourism opportunities that can be harnessed and can improve the profile of certain coastal areas, obviously for economic benefit.
But let me introduce... The 62 actions also relate to other shark issues as well, including foundational areas such as taxonomy, the assessment of shark populations and spatial assessments, as well as the location of sharks within South Africa's exclusive economic zone. Every year, over 500,000 tons of sharks are caught as bycatch around the world, including here along this coastline. Now, not only does it threaten the livelihoods of legitimate historical fishing communities, but it also threatens South Africa's position as one of the top 5 nations in the world with the greatest biodiversity of shark species. Sharks have also been a traditional fishery in South Africa for over a century and have sustained many small-scale fishes.
Apart from the iconic species like the white sharks, there is quite an important fisheries component that shark represent in South Africa. So we have a number of fisheries that actually target sharks, that catch sharks. So they are parts of the livelihoods of the South African people, and they have been like that for over 100 years.
It's a very long tradition, and it's occurred.
Now that the recommendations have been put to the department, the panel will closely monitor and coordinate the implementation of the plan so that these iconic ocean creatures may still be enjoyed in a sustainable way for generations to come. Travis Andrews, CGTN, Cape Town.
Well, I'll be standing by to bring you more updates, including the latest from the world of sport. But now let's take a look at what's happening in the business news with Rama.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Here's what's coming up in business. A contraction in economic output pushes Nigeria into a recession. We look at the latest data. And passenger car sales in Egypt have gone up by 24% in September despite the pandemic. We'll explore why next.
Business in Africa is at the crossroads where opportunity meets innovation, where profitable new markets collide with global trends. From the sound of an African bell on a stock market's floor to the shout of a trader in a bustling free market. It's colorful, vibrant, and exotic. CGTN stands at the gateway to Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. From Morocco to South Africa, we talk to the deal makers and actors who fuel its engines of growth. only on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Let's start in Nigeria. The country has slipped into recession after its GDP contracted for the second consecutive quarter for the first time since 2016. Now, growth has been pretty fragile, to be clear, and COVID-19 has hit Africa's largest economy fairly hard amidst relatively oil prices too. The continent's top oil producer and exporter relies on crude sales for at least 90% of its foreign currency earnings. Nigeria normally accounts for an average of 2 million barrels a day of output, but the effects of the pandemic and low oil prices have combined to cut production to about 1.4 to 1.6 million barrels of crude a day. Now, the recession 4 years ago was its first in a generation, and the country emerged from it the following year. On to another African colossus. The South African mining sector has been in decline as far as its importance as a contributor to the country's economic growth is concerned. Back in 2018, it accounted for roughly $23.2 billion, about 7.3% of GDP. But it still remains a significant sector, the pandemic notwithstanding. CGTN's Angela Coppola takes up the story.
It's estimated in a Boston Consulting Group report that 15 to 25% of South Africa's output would be lost due to the lockdown. But mines are ramping up production.
It's a case of now trying to get as close to 100% or something mirroring full capacity by year end or the first quarter of next year. And so I think that's the big challenge, is doing it in a way that's safe but still efficient.
The regulatory environment remains a challenge in the mining sector. It's been dealt with generally. The challenge is the artisanal and small-scale mining sector, but policies are being put in place there.
We already had it work in terms of preparatory work. As policies developed, we're working on the ground. If we're not at each other's throat with the mining industry, with labor, work together, we can do much better.
Turning to the bigger players, the listed South African mining sector is diverse, from precious metals to coal.
The platinum group metals part of the precious metal sector, prices there are very strong. They've been very resilient throughout 2020. And as a result of that, the cash flows that those businesses are generating are exceptionally high. That allows those businesses to either pay down debt aggressively, to get more generous with shareholders in terms of their dividends or potentially even buybacks, or just to start piling up cash.
The iron ore sector is a case in point and has surprised on the upside despite the hard lockdown. It's been trading at above $120 in the recent past.
Iron ore has remained very strong in 2020. Vale's supply issues have been a big contributor to that. I don't think anyone expected, 12, 18 months ago, I don't think anyone would have predicted it would be that high. And so it's a similar story with the PGM space, where you have very strong prices, very strong earnings and cash flows. And if those iron ore prices hold up, then those shares are very cheap.
You're either a bull or a bear in the mining sector in South Africa. You can't sit on the sidelines here. And with everything now in place, it appears that it might be time to become more bullish. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
On to North Africa now. Passenger car sales in Egypt rose by 24% year on year in the month of September, with some 17,051 vehicles flying off showroom floors across the country. Authorities there attribute the recent rise in sales volumes to purchases which were postponed due to the outbreak of the pandemic. CGTN's Yasser Hakim has all the details.
The COVID-19 induced lockdown and curfews pushed the Egyptian car market into a standstill from March to June. However, there's been a gradual sales growth since then, after buyers shrugged off the wait-and-see strategy adopted during the second quarter of the year. Omar Belba, a longtime car dealer in Cairo, says higher demand was expected from the month of September.
First of all, September, October and November, and generally the fourth quarter is usually the high season for sales, because that is when international car producers in Europe and Far East in particular release their new models every year, and clients wait for that period to buy the new model of the year. Let's say sales have also improved because cars have become a necessity product in Egypt and not just a luxury. People need cars because of the expansions in the cities, the new highways and roads, while the transportation system is still not fully developed to cover the growing population.
During periods of recession, prices of vehicles usually fall, but not this time. It has actually shot up recently despite the outbreak of the pandemic, as consumers adopt measures to coexist with the virus.
More than 50% of the vehicle plants worldwide have stopped production because of the pandemic. 50% of feeder industries and spare parts producers have stopped work as well. Therefore, production and supply have dropped by 50%, which has led to the acute price increase that we have seen.
Experts, however, have opposing views of how the market will react if the coronavirus pandemic continues for an extended period.
I am optimistic that people are learning to live with the pandemic and adapting to the coronavirus situation. I expect demand will continue to grow, but most clients will target cheaper cars than they had originally wanted.
As long as there is the coronavirus and there is no vaccine to kill it off completely, then all sectors of the economy, especially the car industry, will be negatively affected. It will suffer.
The conflicting views by experts is just a reflection of the uncertainty caused by the coronavirus in every aspect of people's lives. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
On to matters further afield now. The G20 says it will strive for fair global access to COVID-19 vaccines. The leaders of the 20 largest economies in the world have held a two-day virtual meeting in a bid to better coordinate their response to this pandemic. Hosted by Saudi Arabia, the group has now released its communique. Jacob Greaves has been looking at the details there.
The headline-grabbing pledge from this communique is a vow to spare no effort to supply COVID-19 tests, drugs and vaccines fairly and affordable to all people. However, the agreement stops short of mentioning how they will do this and, perhaps more importantly, how much will be spent. The EU had been pushing for $4.5 billion from the G20 to go towards COVID-19 related medical aid for poorer countries, but there's been no mention of that in the final communique. Another announcement from this G20 is the extension of a freeze on debt service payments for poorer countries until mid-2021. The G20 initiative has helped 46 countries defer $5.7 billion in debt payments, but that's short of the 73 countries that were eligible and promised savings of around $12 billion. The G20 has urged private creditors to take part in the initiative. The second day of the summit also saw a climate change discussion. Chinese President Xi Jinping called on the G20 to take a lead when it comes to tackling climate change.
First, we should strengthen our response to climate change. The G20 should continue to take the lead in tackling climate change. We need to follow the guidance of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and push for full and effective implementation of the Paris Agreement. Not long ago, I announced China's initiative to scale up its nationally determined contributions and strive to peak carbon dioxide emissions by 2030 and achieve carbon neutrality by 2060. China will honor its commitment and see the implementation through.
Whilst most leaders outlined efforts to reduce emissions or target carbon neutrality, current US President Donald Trump took aim at the Paris Climate Accord.
To protect American workers, I withdrew the United States from the unfair and one-sided Paris Climate Accord, a very unfair act for the United States. The Paris Accord was not designed to save the environment. It was designed to kill the American economy. I refuse to surrender millions of American jobs and send trillions of American dollars to the world's worst polluters and environmental offenders.
Trump's comments, however, come as the projected winner of this month's US presidential elections, Joe Biden, has pledged to rejoin the international accord. Jacob Greaves, CGTN in Dubai.
And finally, Americans are preparing to embrace this year's Black Friday on November the 27th. But for some, the sales have already started because, as Mark New finds out, companies have had to really change their approach because of the pandemic.
This is Black Friday a year ago, and this is Black Friday today.
I don't have any thought of going to any store this year just due to COVID. It's just too much of a risk.
Black Friday started much earlier this year, in large part because of Walmart's plan to keep people safe while also keeping them shopping. Instead of focusing on a single day, Walmart broke up the shopping holiday into 3 separate events, with the earliest beginning all the way on November 4th. Like many other brick-and-mortar operations, Walmart has combined Black Friday in-store specials with online promotions.
Identity crisis is the right word. If you are a retailer and you've spent your entire career learning how to drive doorbuster sales into physical retail stores, and this year you're not supposed to do that, what do, right? Black Friday is a super spreader event. The way they have responded to this is by really making sure that their online merchandising, their online inventory planning has been way better than the previous years, and trying to also make sure that they can do things like buy online, pick up in the store.
Kalyanam says e-commerce is making up only about 20% of early holiday sales, but it also depends on how one interprets the numbers.
How do consumers start their shopping journey? So if you go to a company like Google and ask them where are consumers starting their shopping journey, they'll tell you that it's not 50-50. It's a vast majority of consumers today, maybe as high as 90%, are starting every shopping journey online.
We thought that we would see more customers take advantage of these early sales, but from our initial numbers, we didn't see that case. And we're starting to notice more and more people are waiting for the last minute this year. It's sort of a slow grind upwards as we get closer and closer to Black Friday.
Fong heads Buy Via, a mobile app and website that searches for the best online deals. He says the pandemic has accelerated the shift from in-store to online shopping by at least 5 years. Fong also says this year's Black Friday is blurring the lines with the day traditionally set aside for online shopping, Cyber Monday.
With the pandemic and more people shopping online, you could say, what's the difference between Black Friday and Cyber Monday? Because Black Friday traditionally has been the day for retailers, physical retailers. Is it turning into the same thing as Cyber Monday? Yes.
Whatever was the playbook that we had for holiday shopping, this year with COVID, that playbook went out of the window.
Kalyanam says the anticipated outcome of the holiday shopping season is unclear, noting the gains of those eager to buy could also be canceled out by those who've recently lost jobs and are still waiting for stimulus checks to arrive. Mark New, CGTN, Mountain View, California.
And I'll leave you there for the time being. I'll be back at the top of the hour, though. In global business, we'll be looking at the question of sovereign debt levels across Africa. Kenya is in particular focus. It's turning to the IMF for a bit of help as its debt levels go past 7.1 trillion shillings. It's spending at least half of its October tax take just on servicing debt. But the country says it doesn't want any debt relief. Why? We'll explore that at the top of the hour. In the meantime, Hannah will be back with more news in 60 seconds.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Well, skydivers from around the world have descended on a unique skydiving spot, the Pyramids of Giza in Egypt. Skydivers dotted the skies with their parachutes at what is becoming an annual event. Here's Adel Amourouhi with more.
90 world-class skydivers have gathered in Cairo for a rare international event taking place under the COVID-19 pandemic. It's called Jump Like a Pharaoh, and it gave skydivers the opportunity to soar over the pyramids.
Wherever you are born, whatever you do in your life, you know the pyramids, the great pyramids of Egypt. So having the privilege to be invited to jump over here, it's very special. Could be more special places in the world for the landscape or the mountain or the beaches, but historically there is no better place than here. It's the best.
The global pandemic has had its impact on the event. When Jump Like a Pharaoh opened its registration, few applied. So organizers had to come up with a new attraction, a night jump.
Skydiving has a very big number of fans, more than 5 million around the world. That's why we are trying to mix between the sport and tourism in Egypt here. We have still 2 loads and 1 night jump. And this will be the first night jump ever happen over the pyramids in the history.
This is the only international event happening this year. I am jumping again. I'm jumping in the last load. It's going to be epic. But I'm so excited because it's not very often that women get to do something like this. And so when other women see what I'm able to do, they can see themselves in me, and I think that's amazing and inspirational.
For athletes who entrust a harness and a parachute with their lives, organizers still maintain strict measures against COVID-19.
You know, I think it's safe. Obviously, there's a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of forms to be filled out, but we play it by the books. And did testing every couple of days, and so did everybody else. So I think it's very safe.
I'm not afraid because I used to travel a lot, so it's easier for me to know that it's going to be okay. But I understand that people that don't travel so much are kind of like scared because you never know how it's going to be. But no, actually, I think we should not stop living because if you fear death, it's because you want to live. But if you want to live, then living means traveling, means meeting your friends. So let's live.
This is the 3rd edition of Jump Like a Pharaoh, with nearly 20 countries participating in jumps over the ancient wonders. Adil Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
The sport news after the break. Here's what's coming up. African football chief Ahmed Ahmed handed 5-year ban by FIFA.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Time now for the sports news. The Confederation of African Football President and FIFA Vice President Ahmed Ahmed has been handed a 5-year ban for breaching the FIFA Code of Ethics. The decision was released on Monday by the Adjudicatory Chamber of the Independent Ethics Committee. The committee found that Ahmed had breached various articles of the FIFA Code of Ethics, as CGTN's Adil Amrouhi now reports.
Ahmed Ahmed is guilty. A statement many concerned with African football knew but never dared to speak. On Monday morning, FIFA said it's official. The first man to replace Issa Hayatou in CAF is corrupt.
It's a historic step. We haven't seen the president of CAF or even a senior member convicted that way before. Infantino is apparently applying his motto of no corruption in football. Ahmed Ahmed is out of the CAF elections for sure. He's no longer the head of CAF. He still has the right to appeal. But until the process is over, he will remain out.
For 5 years, the Malagasy will be banned from any football activity. That will force him to resign from heading his country's football association. FIFA's Independent Ethics Committee will fine him more than $240,000. But what about the millions of dollars he has been convicted in wasting? And are there other culprits in CAF?
FIFA's penalties are regulated by the Code of Ethics. They cannot increase the amount of the financial penalty. definitely this financial penalty is incomparable. If there were other people involved, I believe they would have been included in the FIFA announcement. But now it's up to Ahmed to reveal further names involved with him in the corruption.
The adjudicatory chamber investigating Ahmed has convicted him of breaching his duty of loyalty, offering and accepting gifts or benefits, abusing his position, and misappropriation of funds. He has been also found guilty of managing CAF's tactical steel contract. It replaced Puma's deal for 15,000 sports items worth about $250,000. Tactical, a company owned by Ahmed's friend, got 4 times that amount in return of just 50% more items. It's a historic step for African football and the promise of a better future in CAF, which will be electing a new president within the next few months. Africa is remembering CAF former Secretary General, the late Amr Fahmy, who has blown the whistle and lost his job standing against Ahmed while everyone else remained silent. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
The return of Kenya's domestic football league is drawing closer with the opening match day set for Saturday the 28th of November. The Ministry of Sport unveiled a raft of measures to ensure a safe return of sporting action as the country also grapples to contain the coronavirus. Among the mandatory requirements set out by the committee is testing of all players and officials. The issue of the cost of testing proved to be a huge concern for teams, however. The Football Kenya Federation has today set in motion COVID-19 testing for all Premier League clubs ahead of the league kickoff. In basketball, the Algeria national basketball team has withdrawn from the upcoming qualifiers of the African Basketball Championships in Kigali, Rwanda. Algeria belonged to Group D with Nigeria, Mali, and Rwanda. The North African country has since been replaced with South Sudan in that group. Meanwhile, Mali were the first team to arrive in the country last Wednesday before conducting their first training session at Kigali Arena over the weekend. Rwanda's basketball governing body, FERWABA, has said that the qualifiers will be played behind closed doors due to the pandemic, with Mali taking on the hosts in the tournament's opener on Thursday. Well, that's it for this edition of Africa Live. Remember that you can send your feedback to the contacts on the screen and follow us on digital media platforms. From me, Hannah, Viviers, and the rest of the Africa Live team, thank you so much for watching. Rama is up next with Global Business.